I tried very hard to get in touch with Wendi Richter just for this story because I wanted to talk to her. And I couldn't find her. My producer couldn't find her. So, Wendi Richter, if you're out there, we have another idea for a screenplay. We'd love to talk to you.
I'm actually the highest paid female athlete.
In Washington?
In history.
Sounds good. Nigeria Chambers from Big Gold Belt Media. Ash, thank you for the time today and congratulations on your new film, Queen of the Ring, which is going to be coming to theaters March 7th. How you doing today, brother?
Good, man. Thank you. Did you do a reaction video to the trailer?
Well, you know it. I
I
was like,
watched that. I watch everything. I saw that. I thought it was great.
thank
That
you
was
very
great.
much. Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I've been obviously as a pro wrestling fan, but just an entertainment fan in general. But obviously, when you really blend my two worlds into together, you know, we're obviously looking for more stories to be told and more excitement to really get out to the world. And this one had some challenges, especially during the strikes and whatnot. But you're finally here, and I just want to make sure that I take a moment to give you a flower and say congratulations on making it this far in an unprecedented time of filmmaking, shall we say.
Well, thank you, man. That means a lot, and it's yeah, that's a great comment. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So one may look at this and see your name and say, "Oh, director, writer, I may or may not be familiar with his work." But what I don't think a lot of people were going to realize is that, you've really been embedded into this wrestling community for a while. Like, there's your background within music, your relationship with Billy Corgan back in the day, and then obviously if you take a look at the casting here, like this doesn't just you shook his tree and a bunch of these folks just fell from out of it. Like obviously there had to be some garnered relationships over some time. So for me, and the biggest thing for this film that I wanted to make sure I get out to everybody is like the production here is top tier. And that tells you just because of your relationships with these folks, with just your appreciation for pro wrestling. So for you, I want to know if you could talk a little bit about ensuring how everything was accurate to the time, from obviously the production, the sets, the costume designs, the wrestling choreography. Like you checked all the boxes and got it done right. Talk to me about it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, one little nugget real quick before we go into it about my history of pro wrestling. There's actually two great episodes of a show we made with the Ultimate Warrior called The Warrior Show, where he's putting rock bands through these crazy boot camps.
Yeah.
And they're on YouTube. You can watch them for free. We'll have to do another interview sometime about what happened with that show. But those two episodes are great, and I stand by them. They got great replay value. So YouTube search The Warrior Show after this, and hopefully you enjoy.
Sounds
Um,
good.
yeah, so much of it is dependent upon having the right department heads. So with filmmaking, each key department, and these are the ones that also can win awards for their work. You have the production design, you have hair and makeup, you have costume, you have all these different, cinematography. And I was very fortunate to get a crew of people that were available in our time frame that were all fantastic at what they do. You're really only as strong as a director. You're only as strong as your script, your
Yeah.
actors, and your department heads, and everyone in those departments too, of course. And they all played. Everyone plays their position to win, right? Whether it's sports or creative or anything. And I was just very fortunate with how many talented people worked on this film. And but we did take creative liberties. The music, I wanted everything to just be whatever I thought was great for the emotion of the scene without doing anything that would take you too far out. It's not like there's like crazy modern EDM or something that's just like, wow, that's polarizing to period. So I think everything has a period feel to the scene, even if it is, past, oh, this scene's in 1953, but that song came out in 58 or whatever it is.
Mm,
So we took creative liberties there, and then also just with it being about someone who's pretty much unknown, and there's very limited videos of or and a handful of photos. It's easier to kind of let it slide. It's not like you're making a biopic on The Rock or Stone
yeah.
Cold Steve Austin, and there's all this
Yeah.
data and video. Like you can have a lot more fun with the scenes. So that was part of also why I thought it would be really great to tell the story after reading the book because you're just gonna be able to take more creative liberties while still keeping the heart of the story the same.
Yeah, I understand that. Listen, and it really goes into my next question because in the fact of doing research, even beyond the book, you have somebody like Jim Cornette, a wrestling historian, who I'm sure was just ready to just dump whatever bit of knowledge, experience, testimonies he may have had. So I'm curious from all of the process, from either, talking and researching with other folks and whatnot, was there anything that really jumped out to you that you sort of still keep pretty close to you as sort of like a wow factor in your research?
I think it's the shoot matches. Because so many people just they don't know. I knew that they would have them backstage, but with Mildred, specifically with Clara Mortensen, who Tony Storm plays, and with June
Yeah.
Byers, who Kaylee Camille plays, these really happened because it was for the belt and there was a lot of things at stake. And they fought for real with a live packed arena. I mean, that is like so fascinating. And I think also just for the average like moviegoer fan or sports fan, it's like, okay, yeah, pro wrestling scripted, it doesn't really, interest you. However, what happens when it's not, but they still have
Yeah.
to perform? And that's what I think is such a great hook. That's also why I think for a movie like it's an underdog story, it's a sports story, it's also a mother and son story, but I think a lot of sports movies you kind of live and die by the last 20 minutes if people are going to go back and see it and talk about it, right? The main
Yeah.
event pay off. And you could see how that would be hard for a pro wrestling story because we're assuming pro wrestling scripted. The wrestler works great because he jumps off the top rope and he's essentially dies doing what he loves. So there's still stakes. So for this, I'm like, oh, there's all the stakes. They're shooting. This is awesome. This has to be a movie. So I think it's the shoot match, man. That is just, I mean, what's more interesting than that?
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I was definitely wild, and especially for everything that the women were fighting for, just to see that like the competitiveness was really in their blood, and it went to that point because of that. Such a fascinating story, and that's absolutely an excellent
Another thing,
bit to
by the
talk
way, on
about.
the research, I didn't know, and I'm glad, I learned about Mildred because then it led me to the Wendi Richter screw job with Spider Moolah. I only knew about Montreal screw job, right?
Yeah,
The Wendi Richter one, I mean that's videos on YouTube. That's crazy, and she was totally over at the time. She
yeah,
could have been the breakthrough for women's wrestling back in the 80s because it wasn't what happened once Wendi went away. It was just the Moolah menagerie.
yep.
And honestly, I think that falling out that Wendi had with Vince, I think that set back women's wrestling from breaking back into the mainstream
Mm,
probably for decades. I mean, that
mm,
really messed things up because she was over, and the whole Cyndi Lauper connection. She was going to
yeah.
break pop culture the way that Hogan and Warrior and all these other people were, and
Ooh,
that's really tragic that happened. And I tried very hard to get in touch with Wendi Richter just for this story because I wanted to talk to her. And I couldn't find her. My producer couldn't find her. So Wendi Richter, if you're out there, we have another idea for a screenplay. We'd love to talk to you.
there it is. That's what I was about to bait you for, seeing where you want to go next. So I mean, because like with the coming success and already the independent success of this, but the coming success within the theaters, and obviously we've seen the Iron Claw and the success it's had. I mean, we want these stories, and the consumers, not just the wrestling fans, but all the consumers are going out there to want to see this, and this is definitely one that they want to check out. I do have limited time, so I want to make sure I be very particular in this question. You mentioned something that I thought was really interesting. I know you're a wrestling fan yourself. I'm just curious about when you talk about like what the end of a match, that big moment meant. Everyone's right now talking about the John Cena heel turn. Did you have a reaction to that?
I thought it was great. And I think he should shave his head. You know, I just think he's gonna look more, like go into your full Statham era or something.
Yeah.
I thought it was really smart. Um, and it's one of those moments again that I think helps break through. I call them civilians, like people that aren't into pro wrestling, because they go, "Wait, what's the big deal?" And you go, "Well, he's John Cena. John Cena is in mainstream because of his acting career and just he's
He's
cracked
made the
pop culture,
most make a
right?"
wish wishes of any person in the world. He's that
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. And so seeing that, people go, "Oh wow!" Like so he became a bad guy. So yeah, so now there's a bunch of devastated little kids all over
Yeah.
the world that are going, "My hero became a villain."
Yeah.
It's great storytelling, man. Again, it's that those moments that just break through the pro wrestling vortex into just mainstream culture, which I hope our movie is able to do as well. But I loved it.
Yeah, listen, as a consumer, I gotta say your hope is will be satisfied very soon because once the world do get to check it out on March 7th, you will get to see yourself that this will be well received and loved. It's a fantastic film, Ash,
Uh,
and I really can't wait to talk to you a lot more. 10 minutes was great, man, but I feel like we could go for another 30 if need be, you know?
Anytime, man. I would love to come back.
Absolutely. Listen, folks, Queen of the Ring comes to theaters March 7th. Ash, has been a pleasure today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, buddy. I
Go
appreciate
to
the
the
time.
movies.